I'd like to start by introducing our first panel and our speakers today. The panel will be on the topic of the evolution of security awareness to human risk management. I'm joined by Dominick Frasier, the head of security awareness at Meta, and Dennis Legori, associate director of security awareness at Carrier. As a quick introduction, Dominick has over 15 years of security experience and is responsible for the conversation around security being between technical and non-technical teams, which extends to employees and clients as the head of security awareness at Meta. He has a robust knowledge of the information technology and physical security sector, including applicable regulations and frameworks. And for Dennis, he's been involved in the security awareness industry since 2013, and he has built and led global security awareness programs at Total System Services and at Carrier. His areas of specialization include phishing simulations, gamification, digital transformation, AI best practices for businesses, and high user engagement. Dominick and Dennis, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you both. So let's dive in, and I want to start by just setting the stage. The panel that we have here today is obviously about the evolution and the maturity of our industry from security awareness to human risk management. So with both of you guys being in this industry for more than 10 years, maybe we can start with you, Dominick. Share a little bit about the evolution of this industry that you've observed being in the human risk and security awareness industry in the last decade plus of your career.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Going back in time, really have to look at this is that it was ultimately a check the box exercise for a lot of organizations. As organizations were dealing with different clients and different partners, the question was arising as what are you doing to take security of your organization, of the matters that are of value for me as a user or as a partner, keeping them safe. And so we had the startup of the annual training and things of that nature. And what happened was the bad actors or our adversaries, they got good, they got wise to all those actions and required the organizations to get better as the bad actors got better. And it led us to our current state where we're really looking at how this is interwoven into the business itself. And it's not something that's bolted on or added on as a check the box exercise anymore. It really is fundamental to the overall success of the organization, which is something that warms my heart to this day.
Excellent. And Dennis, we'll pass it over to you too. Share a little bit about the evolution you've seen.
Yeah, to add on to what Dominick was talking about, we've also seen the evolution of security tools. There's a whole list of SaaS solutions making companies more robust. However, rather than data breaches going down, data breaches have continued to go up. Even numerous reports that are out there, the Verizon DBIR, the Equifax report, security awareness is mentioned numerous times in those, respective reports. 74% of data breaches are caused due to human error. So we see, companies are realizing that, your tools, your technologies are not enough. Attackers are always a step ahead. And the fact that, I think the unknown factor there is that human element. So we're seeing an increase in the importance of that, human element. The other piece of it is as your security, for any company, as your security tools mature or your security program matures, your human element has to mature as well, or that prevents a more viable attack vector, similar to supply chain attacks as well. They're more viable because if a company has, strong defenses, well, let's use the back door, let's use the side door, let's look at your humans.
So you talked about the evolution of the security tools. You've talked about the evolution, both of you, just about what we've seen in the industry. Obviously, that comes with quite the evolution of you guys in your roles. So as the leaders of these teams, how have you seen your roles evolve? I think in the audience here, we've got a number of security awareness leaders. Maybe touch on how your roles and your responsibilities, and not just the tech in the process, but you guys in seat and your teams that you're surrounded by, how has that changed in the course of your career? Maybe Dennis, you can continue on from there.
Yeah. So, when I started back in 2013, we had, as Dominic was mentioned, your annual security training for compliance. And then, of course, it's conducting these periodic phishing. There was no definition of how often you should conduct phishing simulations. You just conduct phishing simulations. That's really evolved from there into, the more monthly phishing simulations. Annual training is just your compliance thing that's quickly pushed aside because you focus on monthly initiatives, monthly communications, and other. It's become more than a full-time role as we build the security from one person to an actual team and department. And I think as we continue to evolve in the role, it also you have to work closely with security operations teams. I mean, before it was, phishing simulations was to see who clicked. Now it's just to see who reports and getting visibility, because once those simulations stops, if people are reporting, they will catch those emails that your security tools miss. Same thing with incident response. Those things that your tools can't catch, people will encouraging people to report suspicious activity. That focus really has gotten us into the spotlight of working with threat intelligence and hunt teams, working with security operations teams, working with your compliance teams. So it's really almost become kind of the face of a cybersecurity team. Your CISO is the leader, but your real face is security awareness.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dennis said it beautifully there. From my perspective, in my evolution, it's really been a matter of meeting the people in the organization where they're at. Dealing with a more technical environment, you get people who are tenured, who have been in their role in their industry for decades, and then you have individuals who have just recently graduated from programs and are coming to the organization with less experience or less concern around those things. And really, it's been a matter of taking a more risk-based approach over time, because looking at the organizational priorities, it is important to recognize that there can be some level of risk that is going to be accepted as just part of conducting business. So if you are a person who digs wells, you're going to be expecting occasionally there may be a little bit of a collapse or something like that. So you have to know that and be prepared to handle that when it arises. And the same thing goes for the organization. So getting away from just that compliance exercise and saying we've done our due diligence and checked the box, now it's really become a matter of identifying, using teams and tools in the organization, such as the Security Operations Center or incident response teams, to let us know, like, where is the risk at and to what severity or level is that risk, to make sure that we are putting forth our efforts where it really matters, that's going to have the greatest impact, rather than trying to take these broad strokes and say, well, we've hit all the risk, we've touched all the things, rather than really focusing on where it's going to be most beneficial. And that transformation over time, I've seen it become a much more fruitful exercise, because what we've done is we've taken a small but mighty team in most organizations and given them laser and precision focus based upon the risks that are taking place in the organization. And as a result of that, we started to see the decrease in those risk exploitations take place. And that creates an opportunity to then expand into those other known areas of risk, but they may not be as prevalent or as severe. So just embracing and owning the risk-based approach has been a huge transformation that I've been able to embrace to help each organization that I've been associated with really start to chip away at and harden their security posture over time.
You've both spoken at length here around this evolution really coming down to the expansion and the transformational change of involving other departments. You guys made it very clear part of this evolution and maturity includes working closer with the SOC team, working closer with threat intelligence, compliance teams, not just sitting in a silo for security awareness initiatives. How does that impact things like analytics? How does that impact things like the user experience, right? Because obviously in this industry, even as it's matured, it's all about the end user. Because if it's not effective for the end user, we go through all this work and all this effort and it's for nothing. So, through this story that you guys are telling us around your involving other teams, how does that impact the metrics that you track, the analytics that you care about to show actual business ROI? And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is how does this affect our end users across our businesses?
That's a bit of a loaded question there, Theo. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But Dennis, would you want to take a crack at it first, or would you like for
Yeah, I think when we look at your SANS maturity model, where your level 5 is a metrics driven model, right? We have this assumption that you have to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from no security to compliance and those levels up to your metrics model. My opinion is, metrics should start from day one. You have to have visibility for the effectiveness. Metrics go beyond the clear. For me, the click rate is not even a metric anymore because it's not tied to the sophistication. There's no context on a click rate. So for us, targeting metrics, like for me, the most important is the reporting rate. And then how I tie the next metric, which is important to me, is the resiliency, the reports to the clicks, the ratio. It can also be the percentage of reports to the clicks. For that tells you for every click, how many people reported it. So that kind of ties into the reporting. It doesn't take away what the click rate is, but it develops kind of that story on that. So the higher the resiliency, the better you are. It has to be above 1. But aside from that, it's also your training, going beyond that annual training. Obviously, the percentage, you want 100% because it's a compliance requirement, trying to get to that 100% level. But even when we do these monthly training campaigns, how is your attendance still continue to high? How are your ratings, right? We average at 97% ratings. We always try to be the highest rated training. And that makes us put efforts. Maybe we get industry speakers, we get guest speakers, we talk about different experiences, but also there's transparency on the metrics, letting the organization know, hey, here's how we did in our phishing simulations, here's how we did, these are the metrics, and having that transparency where people know how to ask those questions. And that increases the rating, it increases the audience, because not only do you have a training session, most of our digital training sessions are 30 minutes. We do it for 1 hour for the cyber, simply because 30 minutes, and then if anyone wants to stay, we call it the after party. And most people stay for that. And it's an interactive Q&A just like this, where people can ask what they want. We chat in real time. And that helps with all of the user engagement. And then, of course, you follow the Evil Dead model, the cult following, right? If you don't really have a super high budget, you get a bunch of users who get your program, they will spread the word for you.
Dominic, do you want to maybe add on a bit to that, to how you've seen the analytics evolve, and perhaps how the role for the end user has evolved as well?
Absolutely. I've said this before, but security is going to end up following the business, because the business is going to go where the profit is. So in order to make sure that profit is protected, we have to ensure that we are doing our diligence to protect that. So the business will identify, like, where are our areas of greatest concern. In this current state of the world, like, data is the new gold standard. So if you can get a hold of the data, you can do all kinds of things with it. So what we tend to do on the teams that I've been a part of, and the organizations I've been associated with, I follow the risk from the business standpoint. So having been in healthcare, we're looking at it like, we don't want any patient information to be accessible, because that's what's going to be sought after. So if we start to see any evidence of any breaches or attempts to knock on firewalls or anything like that, we're going to start seeing what can we do to intercept that before it actually ends up being able to take place. One of my favorite things to do is to implement interstitials. So as teams are working and doing things, is to really catch them in the moment where they're going to be most likely to create a risk, or have a course of action that is going to potentially cause downstream impact, and give them that education, give them that nudge, give them that reminder of, hey, while you might have this option, the more safe, the more secure, the more risk averse course of action is this. And depending on what they choose, that gives us our feedback on that ROI. Did they actually take the time to consume that and act upon it, or did they, attempt to circumvent it, throw it on one of their extra screens that was playing in the background and continue on their way? There are just a lot of ways for us to get that ROI. And then when we see what the end results are for the efforts that are taking place, were those unsafe or less secure actions implemented, or was the guidance taken and suggested that prevented, the need for additional resources to be allocated towards a project later on, because a vulnerability was identified or an incident took place or something to that effect. And at that point, the business says, you took a proactive approach, caught them in real time, saw for certain that this was the action that was attempting to be taken, and then nudged them back onto the right track. And from I'm going to branch off into some of my legal friends. When you have that breadcrumb trail put in place, and they can see whether someone took that guidance or said, I heard you, but I'm going to do it this way anyways. It gives you a really good platform to stand on from a legal standpoint for did an individual or a group of individuals do what was within the corporate policies and acceptable behavior, or did they, for what I tend to say, is go rogue and do what they have the ability to do, and then the cards will fall where they are depending on the severity of the situation.
So as you've talked about this evolution with the user, key part of your both of your roles is also managing upstream and talking about the translation of all these metrics, these human risk metrics,
Yeah.
for a CISO and perhaps for a board. And especially as you're talking about two very large organizations being Meta and Carrier, I would imagine the conversation, it's a business conversation. We're not talking about technical
Yeah.
cybersecurity language. This is truly around the business. Can you share a little bit about how you translate human risk and the metrics that you have both talked about that are important for you guys into terms that matter to the business? Perhaps Dennis, you
Yeah.
can kind of share about. I've watched, Dennis,
Yeah.
a lot of your presentations that you've presented, even most recently, just a couple weeks ago at a conference that we were both at. And I mean, you've done so much work with reporting and metrics and making it
Yeah.
extremely simple to understand, especially to a non-technical and a non-security audience. Can you talk about how that's evolved and how you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the method that we've decided we use, if you're familiar with the Waze navigation, Waze was acquired by Google, so we use the crowdsourcing model. When we started the program, hey, if Waze can crowdsource traffic alerts, why can't we use users to crowdsource security alerts? The other model that we pattern is the evolution of electric vehicles, right? No matter how good your vehicle is, if you don't have an infrastructure in place, where do you charge it, right, to do those long distances? And kind of combining those models, when you look at cybersecurity, you can your infrastructure. We talk about your tools as the backbone of your really great electric vehicle. But what we work on is that human infrastructure. So when we get users from all over the world, out there looking for those alerts, it kind of raises awareness on itself, because even up to from the lowest level, whether you're the intern or whether you're ELT, you get those attacks, you get phished, you get you watch the TV, you see about the latest data breaches that have happened. It is getting more visibility in the industry. Ransomware attacks continue to evolve. Tools continue to evolve, but nobody can keep up, right? Everybody is trying to find what the best solution is. Everything from AI to machine learning. But attackers continue to be that one step ahead, and I think that helps our job when we show, for example, our metrics to the ELT level. Obviously, it includes the click rate and report rate, but it also targets how many defenders we recruit every year. We've got a target of 1,000 defenders. We also show that, you got a target of 1,000. One of our interns achieved that in 10 days. So we spoke at SANS, and she spoke about how she got 1,000 defenders in 10 days. Just last week, I had a new intern join as the other one rotated out. Her challenge was 500 defenders in 5 days, minus minus the International Women's Day luck that the previous person had. But she's still using AI capabilities, got 461 people to sign up in 5 days. But we continuously show those metrics on the user, and once you get that, once you get into the thousands in an organization of people joining, other people join on board as well, and those metrics go all the way up, and then they kind of, you balance it from a ground up approach, but also top down approach as well, where leaders encourage users to join.
Dominick, how do you look at metrics reporting upstream to the C-level, and translating human risk metrics and cybersecurity metrics into terms that make sense for the business?
It's very much like what Dennis said there. The crowdsourcing and getting the people to actually buy into the program, it speaks volumes to the board and the executive leadership team, because it ends up taking on a life of its own. You really create this culture around the concerns from a security and a risk standpoint that as individuals really embrace their place within the organization, they begin to be concerned about protecting it because it matters to them and they consider it to be something that they take pride in personally. But I also add an additional element when I'm talking to the board, because we're talking in a little bit of a different level. I don't remember where I'm stealing this quote from, but the concept of if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense is also an element that has to be brought into that. So when we start talking about profitability or people hours and the costs associated with it, if there are security events that take place, we have to think about how much does it cost to investigate, resolve, and remediate versus how much does it cost us to take proactive measures to prevent those incidents from taking place or growing legs and getting to a larger scale. And when you start looking at the historical data to say it costs this many people, this many hours at this dollar amount versus doing this proactively, which is going to cost us, and it has to be a lesser amount, just candidly, it has to be a lesser amount, because if you end up exceed it, you're not really doing yourself many favors. But when you can really paint the picture and put that scale in front of those individuals and say, this is where the benefit comes, this is where the cost saving is, this is where the ROI, those terms tend to resonate with members of that grouping or at that level for a longer period of time. And then the rest is, I mean, for the most part, it's downhill after that.
What do you see as kind of this next big pivot in our industry? So, we've kind of talked about the evolution from the last 10 years. Where do you guys see this evolution continuing for the next 10 years? And obviously with the introduction of AI and just different types of technologies that we're all weaving into our business, some more rapidly than others, different communication channels. How do you see this evolving for you in your role and for the users and just the future of human risk management? We'll start with
Dennis,
you, Dennis.
I can, yeah. So you talk about AI. I think AI is going to play a key in how security evolves. We've seen the effectiveness of AI. As you said, Tia, when we demonstrated earlier, we run phishing simulations. Without the AI tool, you get an open rate of 20 to 30%. All of a sudden, you launch AI-based phishing, it's 60+%. We're touching 70%. 70% of people are opening up those emails. So there is effectiveness in using some sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning. We also have a vast number of tools that that people have the ability to download. That also presents risks as well. For example, a tool that connects to Zoom and records your entire session. Well, how is that data being protected? What if you have sensitive M&A information that you're sharing on a meeting and then that's being recorded somewhere? So AI definitely does need some guardrails, or we call it speed bumps, so that people are not, downloading, any AI tool, and then, it may be productive, but it also can put the business at risk. We also going to see the shift of what I call technological obsolescence. Especially startup companies, will openly embrace AI, but some companies that don't embrace it, if they decide to block AI tools, they can suddenly fall behind. A good example, what our CISO said, people can potentially make business decisions using AI tools. So if you're not on AI, it's not going to pick up that. They may not be made, you can potentially have a business impact as well. And it's hard to keep up. So I think that's the other thing that we see in the industry. Cyber teams are getting burnt out. It's, before it was long hours and you still have to worry about data breaches, but now it's just the learning. I mean, how do you keep up with all of the AI tools that are there, with all of the new enhancements that are coming in the industry, right? It's just really hard to keep up with all of the technology and with all of the advances. And I think that's going to create its own, its own set of challenges. Whereas we all agree, that having that human element there, having, crowdsourcing cybersecurity will give you kind of that real-time visibility instead of trying to do all of that trading by yourself, right? That you get, collective experience is better than singular experience. And of course, many companies won't have the budget to hire larger cybersecurity teams. We often see that in conferences, like teams struggling to build these larger teams because, Dominick, as you mentioned earlier, it's also a business decision, right? You have to justify your ROI on hiring people. And unless a company has faced a significant breach, there's a good chance that it'll be hard to get. And I think that's going to continue as depending on the stock market and everything, it's all, especially if you're publicly traded, value to the shareholders, value to the investors, right? And cyber is always seen as this expense. Can it be more than that? And finally, one thing that never changes with many industries, third-party risk, right? Your smaller vendors, those that just have this IT guy managing email infrastructure and everything. How do they manage? They don't have a CISO, let alone security awareness, right? So for attackers, hey, if I can't get to the company, let me get through the supply chain, third-party compromise. And we see that after years, right? We still see companies that if they don't have a compliance requirement, they just need to do business.
Absolutely. Dominick, we'll pass this over to you. What do you see the next 10 years looking like in our industry based on the evolution you've seen in the past 10 years?
I see really the full arrival of the AI and ML space. As these continue to evolve, I think we've recognized over the past 10 years that humans and their contributions to security is an element that has to be acknowledged. But as AI and ML starts to evolve and enhance and mature, we're going to see this separate as a separate work stream in many ways, where the current security awareness resources are going to have to dive deeper into the technical side or specialize, whether you are truly on the human risk side or you're on the technical side. And being able to straddle that fence is going to become a much more difficult exercise to maintain because of the overall just advancements that are going to take place in AI and ML space. The complexity that exists with humans is always going to be there. So the need to understand the motivators, the drivers, the susceptibility of an individual, what's going on with them as a person that influences their decision making or their willingness to adhere to policies or different expectations, that's always going to be a challenge that has to be managed and maintained. I don't think that's ever going to go away. But as we get into the solutions and the technologies, that's where we get into the bits and bytes, the ones and zeros, where it gets very linear, and we'll be able to see the machines can think faster, they can handle more processes than we can do, in thousands of years. And we're going to have to be able to rationalize and prepare and protect all of those valuable elements of business, whether it's the data, whether it's the finance, whether it's the people data, whatever it may be. And you're going to have to really have a very specific tool belt on to be able to be effective and efficient in those spaces. So in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see that divergence versus the human capital and the technical capital.
Excellent. Now, I want to keep us on schedule here. We're coming up to time, but I want to end this on a quick lightning round. Dennis, I'm going to start with you. If you had to give a piece of advice to an aspiring or a new security awareness and human risk management lead that is just spinning up their program and getting it set up now, what is the one piece of advice you would give them to be successful?
Take it home. Try and get an audience, whether it's a phishing game or a live training. Try and get an audience. But whatever you do, the training that you give, they should be able to take it home, spread the awareness to their friends and family. So we're not talking business here, talking, getting personal with your users. And use enterprise social media. Social media is a great way to connect with the different teams and engage with them.
Excellent. And Dominick, same question to you. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone launching their first human risk program?
I would say be bold. Be brave, and show strong conviction on the principles that matter. Because if you can't stand or create a platform from which you can stand on soundly, the likelihood of your message and your priorities to be received and appreciated as such has already been eroded.
All right. Dominick and Dennis, fantastic. We're right on cue here. Thank you both. That was a fantastic first panel here to kick off the front lines. I thank you both very, very much. I hope our audience, and I know our audience really enjoyed that.